Hello, Notre Dame fans. Welcome in. I am Ashton Pollard here with Tyler Horka, and we just wrapped up practice number 11 of Notre Dame fall camp. We're going to kind of dive right into it because there is a lot happening on the personnel front. So, Tyler, I'll start there, I guess. Who did you see or not see at practice today?
Definitely more of the latter, which is not a good thing if you're a Notre Dame fan and you're watching this. So you are a Notre Dame fan. Jarrett Patterson, we'll start there, was not at practice, along with a slew of offensive linemen. I don't know if I can name them all off the top of my head. I know Pat Coogan, the backup center, was not out there. A couple tackles, Tosh Baker, Michael Carmody was not out there. Caleb Johnson was not out there. I think Emil Wagner, the freshman, was missing as well. So some of those hurt more than others. And again, we don't know why they're not here. We'll hear from Marcus Freeman Thursday afternoon, and we'll probably have a video after that as well, kind of recapping what he said. But kind of holding your breath right now with the Notre Dame offensive line, because if Patterson is an injury and not an illness, and maybe an illness is going through that room, it would make the most sense. Yeah. But again, we'll clarify with Freeman. You just can't really afford an injury to Patterson, though, because, you know, he's your leader of that offensive line, starter of 3 years at center, moved to guard, and probably the best guard on the team. So Andrew Kristofic was filling in first-team reps, Rocco Spindler, second-team reps. So holding your breath there. And then, of course, the wide receiver room is the other personnel group where all kinds of stuff is happening. Deion Colsey still wearing that knee brace, still working out in the pit. Jaden Thomas was fully dressed in his pads and riding the bike in the pit. So we've seen that earlier in fall camp, and I think it was a concussion thing with him. You hope that didn't come back, because if it starts to linger, you know, head injuries are never something to take lightly. So especially in a wide receiver room that numbers are dwindling and numbers are thin, and that can be proved by Xavier Watts, the safety. The wide receiver turned safety, turned back to wide receiver. He was working out with the wide receivers on Wednesday, wearing number 26 as opposed to the number 4 that he wore with the defense. So that's what he came here as. He is a wide receiver at heart, I would suppose, and he looked really good. You know, crisp route runner, catching passes, but that just shows you where the numbers are at with the Notre Dame wide receiver group, in that you're moving a guy that you moved to safety last year back to wide receiver just because that outlook for September 3rd at Ohio State. Right now, if Watts didn't move, you're looking at 5 guys, and one of those is a true freshman, Tobias Merriweather. Another is a former walk-on, Matt Salerno. So the group is thin, and personnel is an issue right now with the Notre Dame wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of jarring to come in and see half of the room on the bikes or in the pit. We'll kind of stay on that topic because on Monday you were able to talk with the wide receivers and wide receivers coach Chancey Stuckey. What did he say that maybe stood out to you, surprised you, anything of that sort?
Well, surprising how confident these guys are in themselves, being that the situation is what it is. Braden Lenzy said flat out that he's never seen the Notre Dame wide receivers look as dominant as they do right now in his 5 years at Notre Dame. He's been here a while. He's seen a lot. He says this is the best the wide receivers have ever looked. I think that's more of Chancey Stuckey than it is the personnel. He's teaching these guys things that they never even thought of. Wrote about it at blueandgold.com this morning. They're training their eyeballs. They're training the muscles in their eyes to practice catching balls in traffic. The footwork is, you know, more nuanced than they've ever seen it. They're looking at the footwork of defensive backs and linebackers to key in on things that maybe they can gain. Stuckey said it himself, 100th of a second. He said the game is played at 100th of a second. If you can get 100th here, 100th there, that could be the difference between a broken pass and a completion, maybe even a touchdown. So the group is confident. I think Lorenzo Styles, I spent most of my time talking to him, could be a true number 1 wide receiver, and he's only a sophomore. I don't think we're going to see the best Lorenzo Styles that he's going to be at Notre Dame this year, because I think that's going to be next year when he's a junior. But even still, he's probably a number 1 guy. Braden Lenzy might have the best year that he's ever had at Notre Dame. He says he's as fast as he's ever been, as strong as he's ever been, as confident as he's ever been. So there's a couple guys right there. And Jaden Thomas, if you could just get him to stay healthy, I think he's on the verge of a breakout. So 3 really good ones there. The loss of Avery Davis obviously really stings, but people are even talking up Matt Salerno. I wouldn't be surprised if we have another Chris Fink situation on our hands here, where a guy who's been here for so long, has waited for a breakout, has paid his dues as a walk-on, make some plays as a scholarship player in his 5th year. I think that is a real possibility. A little bit out of necessity, but also just because he's a pretty good football player. We've seen it practice in and practice out. So the bottom line with the wide receivers is yeah, the situation is really scary, but they're still confident, and you can't lose that confidence. Once you have the situation that you're dealing with, and on top of that you lose confidence, then you have a really bad position group. They're not at that point yet. They still believe in themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's good. And I'll say, at least from what I've seen, the dominant sentiment was not that the group that they have is not good. It was just that there aren't very many of them. So I think that it's proving true that they're good, they're doing well. Stuckey's certainly helping. But yeah, you got to stay healthy, and especially having a couple of guys in there that are injury prone per se is a little scary, and should be an interesting 12-week season here. But kind of staying with both on the offensive side of the ball and with a group that has dealt with injuries, we were able to just talk with Dylan McCullough and the running backs. We were actually able to talk to everyone that is healthy and expected to play this season. So as you know, Jadarian Price, the true freshman, tore his Achilles back in a summer workout. He was not up there, but we were able to talk with Chris Tyree, Audric Estime, Logan Diggs, and the true freshman that just arrived, Jabron Payne. And I was very impressed with them. They're all very high on Estime. That was kind of my biggest takeaway. But what did you hear from both Coach McCullough and the rest of the group?
So I spent most of my time talking to Logan Diggs just because I want to know when that red jersey is coming off. And he also wants to know when that red jersey is coming off. He doesn't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he has a timeline and he just wouldn't say it. It wouldn't surprise me. But Dylan McCullough also made it seem like he's got no idea. They're just kind of working through the very end of a shoulder rehab process after you have surgery. So I asked him point blank, are you playing September 3rd? He kind of did one of those, like, I don't know. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, I said you're holding your breath with the offensive line based on what we saw today. Kind of holding your breath with Logan Diggs as well, because there's been reports that, oh yeah, he's going to play. He looks like he can play, but you got to realize they're not going to throw him out there if, that it's susceptible to re-injury. You can't do that. All this time that he's spent getting back, you throw it all away if he goes out there, takes one hit, and the shoulder's done. So
right, and then I'll add to that really quickly on the Ohio State topic. Coach McCullough after was also asked a similar question about September 3rd, and his response was, it's not fair to Diggs or the team to have the first major hit he takes be at the hands of Ohio State. He was like, he has to work on the contact here at Notre Dame prior to taking the field on September 3rd. And of course, McCullough said it's not entirely up to him. It's up to the medical staff too, clearing him to go out there. But I think what they need to see from him in terms of timeline, and what the step that we all have to see before he can take the field out there, is having that red jersey come off and taking hits from some of these defensive linebackers here at Notre Dame who are on a similar talent level at the very least to Ohio State. But yeah, they'll have to get through that step first, and we're still waiting on that. I think other than that, what else? We could talk about Estime for hours. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you know that Audric Estime is a massive personality on this team. He showed it today when we both spoke with him. He's great. He's fantastic. And that theme of he can do everything, like he looks like a human bulldozer, but he has quick feet. He has good hands. All of that seems to still be holding true. And it's kind of the first thing that comes up whenever you ask any of them about him. It's like, yeah, you guys say, with good reason, we all say he's a bulldozer because, look at the kid. But he can do it all, and I think that's what we're going to see, especially with a wide receiver depth problem this fall. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, don't be fooled by that 228-pound frame and thinking that he's only going to come in when it's 3rd and goal from the 2 or 3rd and 3 from the 50-yard line. He can do a lot. He's got good feet. He's got good hands. He's a complete back. And I think Notre Dame has a lot of those. Jabron Payne, also, don't be fooled by, I don't know his measurables, but he's the smallest running back of the bunch. Don't be fooled by that. He can move the pile. He can, if strength is needed somewhere, he can, push somebody over. Dylan McCullough said they can all do that. And I think that's what you have in this Notre Dame running backs group. You got a bunch of complete backs. If Kyron Williams was a complete back and maybe you only had one of those because Chris Tyree was injured and the other 2 guys were true freshmen, I think you have a full stable of 4 complete backs this year, only one of those being a true freshman. So you've got a lot of guys who can do a lot. And the last thing I'll say with that group is we're 2 weeks into camp and Chris Tyree hasn't had any ailments whatsoever. That's something that I haven't seen in my entire time covering Notre Dame. Last year was an absolute maze with him. It was turf toe. It was, with the ankle this spring, all these other things. He looks healthy. He looks really good. If you can get that Chris Tyree for the entire season and you have those other guys working around him, like I said, you've got a stable of backs that might be, as good as, the best 5 to 10 groups in the country at that position.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think we're all kind of with good reason going into this as, oh, Chris Tyree is the number one running back. And this is no disrespect to Chris Tyree, and he will get plenty of carries. But I think also McCullough said this spring, like, I don't do 1, 2, 3, 4. I do jobs. He used the terms like, oh, they all major in something. They all have a strength, but we're teaching them all to do everything. And I genuinely think he's serious when he's like, the depth chart is all but like a procedural thing for him. Like if you have a guy, and Jabron Payne, he said he threw him out there with the ones the other day. Like if you have him and he's able to go in and he's proven that he can be a goal line back despite being relatively small, like McCullough's not going to shy away from that just because the depth chart says X or the measurables say Y. So I think that, again, that theme, I think McCullough's been very consistent with all of his themes in recent weeks. So it's kind of all I have on the topic, unless you have anything else.
The last thing I'll say is, you guys see the stadium right here. I think there's 24 days until Notre Dame plays there, 17 days before they play Ohio State. It's getting real.
With that, we will close this out. We will be back tomorrow, as he said, Marcus Freeman. That'll be Thursday. Marcus Freeman will talk, and we will post everything to blueandgold.com. Keep signing up there, and we will be back then. Thanks.